Good morning, Hall. So
Hi,
nice.
sweetheart. How are you?
Great. Nice to sit with you.
Always.
I'm excited to chat with you about a few things. So let's get a little personal. Let's talk about some of the people that have influenced you in your life and why.
Well, in business, I can tell you who they are, and then I'll tell you personally as well. I mean, in business, there are four main people who I'm so grateful for. Peter Healy, who ended up being the owner of William Pitt, Prudential, Connecticut. Incredible. I learned the business from him, really. Neil Gallagher, who was just an outstanding broker at Douglas Elliman when I was there. Carol Corcoran, also. These are people who understood the professionalism and understood how to do it right. I mean, amazing. And then very much so, Esther Kaplan, who was the president of Corcoran when Barbara was at Corcoran. She was amazing. What I loved about her is she called me on everything. What do you mean? Why are you doing? She taught me, I think, more than anybody. And I'm also very grateful to Roger Tuckerman, who provided so many opportunities for me to be successful.
Wow, that's some list.
That's a great list. You know, personally, there have been so many, and I don't think anybody can be everything to you, but I've learned so much from so many people, starting with my mother. I've learned a lot about what to do and what not to do. And as an adult, somebody who you know and know of so well, Dr. Mathilde Krim, probably one of the world's great humanitarians, truly an outstanding individual, unique in the world. She changed thousands of lives. And I'm so lucky because we became the closest of friends for 24 years. And she taught me, I thought I knew a few things. I didn't know anything until I met her.
Yeah, she was a warrior of everything that's right, you know?
Everything that was right. Everything that was right.
Well, you had some great influences in your life.
Great influence. I mean, I am a very fortunate man.
I don't know how many people know this. I think it's such an interesting fact, but your uncle, Wendell Willkie, ran for president in 1940. And I was reading about him, I remember it was a few months ago, more detailed information about him, and I was texting you because he was such a patriot. He had such tremendous courage during a time when it was really a chaotic time in this country, and he was unwilling to run a divisive campaign. And when he lost against FDR, he worked with FDR, and he was very vocal about the United Nations. He was, he really helped the country in many ways. So I wonder, how did he influence you at all? What did you know about him growing up?
Well, first of all, my father was in his 60s when I was born. I'm the last child of the last wife. My father had 7 children over 40 years. I'm his youngest.
Wow.
So I never knew my father. I mean, he was not part of my life after I was 2 years old. And his brother, Wendell, died several years before I was born. So these are guys that were very outstanding and amazing, and I'm very proud of them, but I didn't know them personally. Certainly, there's a lot. Wendell Willkie was a very interesting person, and there have been 4 books written about him just in the last 2 or 3 years. So I'm proud of him, but I wish I had known them.
But it's a part of your legacy. I would think, it's something, such a profound figure in our history that people admire, and there's plaques of him in the New York Public Library. So it's an interesting connection to you. I see a lot of that sort of, willingness to only do things the right way and courage. And so I said that to you in a message. I said, I see that in you.
Well, that was very sweet of you. I mean, the thing is, he was a big guy. I mean, he influenced the world. And, I'm a simple real estate broker. So
but you,
it's not
I disagree with that.
I
think you influence the world. I think we all do in how we show up every day.
Well, we do with the people that we interact with. I agree with that.
Yeah,
and there's a responsibility there.
That's exactly right.
I think you have a responsibility to share what you know and help people and have an effect on whatever it is that you're doing.
100%. What would you say, Hall, was one of the most difficult times for you?
We're getting personal, right?
Yeah.
So
sorry.
I would say by far the most difficult time was childhood. I was raised by a single bipolar mother who was the best, but also very difficult. But I'm also very grateful to her because she gave us so much. And I think I love that expression, childhood is what you spend a lifetime getting over. by age 30, I decided it was time to get over it.
Yeah, good for you.
And so, but that definitely, because I've been a very fortunate person. I've had challenges. I've had some health challenges. I've beaten them. But I think I am extremely fortunate.
I agree with that. I agree. So, Hall, what motivates you?
What motivates me are my relationships, whether that's business relationships or personal relationships. You motivate me. We've been.
Of course I do.
You do. And you're one of the people I admire most and one of the people I love the most. We are wonderful friends. And so I think it's all about relationships, whether it's your partner in life or your colleague or your friend or your customer or the broker that you work with. That's what motivates me. And I would say, if I'm proud of one thing, I'm proud of my relationships.
I was hoping we could have an argument or something. It's not going to be as interesting if we're all lovey-dovey,
Okay.
But that's okay.
Okay.
But what role does balance play in your life?
Balance? Huge. I think I love New York City. I really do. I'm passionate about this city. I love this business. It's all very high-paced and a lot of pressure. I also love farming. I love the country. I'm not good in between. That's not my scene. And for 32 years, I've owned a farm upstate New York. You've been there.
Yep.
And it's a passion of mine. And so on a typical week, Friday night I leave about 8. I get there about midnight, stopping and having dinner on the way. And I'm dealing with dirt and crops and cows and horses and chickens and ducks, and I work it. I'm not a gentleman farmer in that I just walk in and someone else does it. Someone has to do it when I'm not there. That's the only gentleman part of it.
But you have a good balance between
It's great.
New York City and the farm.
It's great. They balance each other. And every Sunday night, I say to myself, especially in beautiful weather, because it's beautiful up there, how do I go back? I always say, if I didn't go back, I wouldn't have it. And the minute I hit George Washington Bridge and I see that skyline, I am thrilled to be in New York.
It's great to have both of those.
So to have both, I'm very lucky I kind of know I needed that. And it's about, and also, I think we work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
We do.
But it's very different than a lot of other people. I mean, it is quick phone calls, quick emails, solve a problem, make a decision, and then I could come out of the barn, take a call, yes, no, yes, and then back in.
Right.
And so I think we're fortunate that way.
I think
but
we are
I think
too.
everyone needs to know what balance they require, and that's the balance I need, and I have it.
You do. Okay, so let's move on to some funner items or topics. What would be your last meal? If you
Am I being convicted?
No, if you're going to the chair.
Death row?
No, but what would be, I always use this question
Right.
when I'm going, like when I
Right.
talk to my kids at night, we always talk about our favorite this, our favorite
Yeah.
that. So what is one of your favorite meals ever?
I grew up in Spain between the ages of 10 and 16, and so I love Spanish food. And I think my favorite dish, if I could only pick one, it's paella. And I think the reason for that is I love things that have flavors, and paella is a rare dish in that every ingredient keeps its own flavor. So many things that you put together, it's a melange, and it may be great, but I can tell the difference between sausage, chicken, clams, shrimp, and rice and saffron. And that's one of the things I really love about it. They're kind of cooked separately and then brought
It's
together.
hard. Paella, to make a good one, is not easy.
It's not easy. It's a lot of work, but I enjoy doing it, and it's one of the few things that I think I'm good at.
And you love croquetas too. You didn't
I
say.
love
croquetas.
croquetas.
Are one of your favorite.
You and I have been to Spain together, and
Yes.
I think I made you eat more croquetas than you ever ate in your
That's
life.
true. This is true. Speaking of which I know the answer to this, what would you say is your favorite place, one of your favorite places in the world?
Well, start with New York City.
Well,
For a city.
Okay.
But
I knew
if-
that already.
Okay, but if we go out of that, and if it's a place like, it's the farm, there's a lot of California in me, and I have a small house in Santa Barbara, and Santa Barbara's been a part of my life since I was 20, and I go out there 3 or 4 times a year for a week at a time, and I love that. I also grew up spending summers on an island in Maine, And I think that is there's something so special about Maine and the coast in the summertime. And actually, it's where everybody in my family, although it was just a summer home, that's where everybody is or will be buried. There's an emotional connection to.
I've never been, but I know you've spoken often about Maine, how much you love it there.
It's beautiful. So these are favorite places.
What is your favorite place in New York City? And don't say standing in front of a street meat, whatever, one of those carts where they sell street meat. That can't be your favorite place. So what is one of your favorite places?
Well, by the way, as you know, it is one of my favorite things. I love street food.
I know you do.
But my current favorite place, just night before last, I was in the office until 9 o'clock at night and walking home, which I do, and I thought, I need something good. There's a wonderful restaurant on Lexington Avenue called August.
Oh, yes, I love August.
And they have this ahi tuna that is so special, very different than anything else. I think I took you there
I've
once.
had that before with you, and it's
wonderful.
excellent.
So I'm not a foodie, although I have a little fun story to tell you about food, but that ahi tuna is something I think about.
Because it's so good.
Yeah, it's so good. The fun story is for 2 winters, this is something most people don't know, for 2 winters in Santa Barbara in my 20s, I cooked Sunday supper for Julia Child.
I knew this.
For 2 winters.
Yeah.
And she was fabulous. It was because I was living with family members of hers, and she came every Sunday night for dinner, and I cooked. And thank God she is, her personality was so great. She was so forgiving.
I loved when she would say, "Bata, bata, bata."
Yeah. And, she would give me a little hint here and there, and everything was delicious, and she was such a pleasure. But it is a claim to fame, and it's not because I'm a great cook. It's just I had the great privilege of cooking for her. And she was there every winter. That was her winter home.
That is a privilege.
It was a great privilege. And just to know her, I mean, she was
fantastic TV. I mean, I remember watching her as a little kid on the TV, like cooking, and she was a little messy. She would put her hand through a cake by accident, like she did things. But in the Smithsonian, they have her original set from when she did that show. And so she was really...
she was so bigger than life, and she had, just like her cousin who I lived with, she had big hands and big feet, like an awkward, like a puppy dog.
Yeah, like
and
a big
she'd come into the kitchen of this gorgeous house and ask what I was cooking. And she would always grab the biggest spoon in the crock and take some and aim it toward her mouth, and somehow it would always end up all over her shoulder. It's just like,
she was
she was awkward.
She was awkward, and that's why I said she would constantly drop things, make a mess. I remember thinking, who's this big woman that my mom is watching all the time on TV? But she was wonderful.
An incredibly attractive person, even when she's putting food on her shoulder.
Paul, you, as I mentioned earlier, have been in real estate for decades. You've seen all sorts of markets from Lehman, 9/11, this recent pandemic, the shutdown that we had. What do you see, what's the crystal ball for New York City moving forward? How do you see the market unraveling in the next year or two?
Well, COVID has been such a huge thing, but, and I'm sure you've read about this as well, looking back to the Spanish flu in 1918 or whenever that was, 1919, 100 years ago, that it was followed by the Roaring '20s. And the reason for that was everyone was cooped up just like we are now, social distancing, staying apart, being worried, frightened. And when it was over, people wanted to hug. They wanted to invest. They wanted to go dancing. They wanted to go to dinner at August. They wanted to do. And it's said, and it makes sense to me, that we're going to go into the Roaring '20s. Sad thing about those Roaring '20s is they ended in '29 with the Great Depression. But, banking regulations have changed a lot since then, so I don't know that we have to do that. So I believe that the future is really bright. As long as we can stay on top of this pandemic and get through it, which it looks like we are, then I think the next, decade is going to be very bright.
Oh, I agree.
And especially for a place like New York, where there's so much to do and so much interest.
And people are coming back.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to newer agents who are just starting in the business? How can they get started? What are some tips that you would suggest?
Well, there's so many, but number one, show up.
What does that mean, show up?
Well, as independent contractors, no one requires you to be here from every day. And I see a lot of agents, if I haven't seen them for a little bit, I assume maybe they're out showing, but I say, how are you? They say, well, I've been at home because I didn't have any appointments today. What do you mean? You were at home. What are you doing at home? You know, you need to go, you need to show up in order to be able to build your base of customers and clients by doing social activities, joining clubs, whatever. And you need to be around the business. You need to learn the real estate. You need to show up. I mean, when I first started, I started in Westport, Connecticut. I'd never been to Westport. And every day was a 14-hour day. When I wasn't taking out a customer, I was going out and looking at properties and studying the records. And it is a 24/7 job. And I think many people don't know how to manage that independent contractor freedom.
It's hard.
I don't have an appointment today, I'm going to sleep late. There's a discipline, and those that bring discipline to it, and you well know this, the brokers that are the most successful, believe me, they show up.
You have to immerse yourself. I think you're right in the actual business, showing up even if you come to the office to talk to your colleagues, talk to your sales director.
It's all about communication.
All those things, they will influence you, because staying at home, even during this pandemic, as we learned, even though we got things done, it didn't feel the same sitting at home. You're not dressed for work. You're, going in and out of the kitchen, snacking, and you don't feel like a professional.
The energy is gone.
The energy is gone, and culture is built really when you're with each other, with other people.
And in other professions, you have to show up. So that's not an issue, but you really have to be self-motivated, because can you stay home today? Yes, you can.
Right. But you should set schedules for yourself, come into the office, go see properties.
Yeah, go see people, go put yourself in a position that can get you closer to a sale or a rental.
I agree with that, yeah. And also, dress the part. You kind of want to look like a professional so people take you seriously. That's a big part of our business.
And that's something that's becoming more of a challenge, because I think, dress has been so relaxed, but you just, and dress codes are very different. I mean, there were years that no guy would go without a tie, but so it's not that you have to wear a certain thing, but you have to, when someone looks at you, again, back to that first impression, that they say, they look like they're here to do business with me, whatever my business is. Just like the plumber arrives with a lot of tools. You can't look like you're on your way to the gym, or coming back from the beach, or just woke up and didn't comb your hair. I mean, again, that impression is huge.
It makes a difference.
And that doesn't, and downtown, you may be wearing something different than if you were going up to a Fifth Avenue.
You could have a blazer and jeans on. It depends.
Anything.
You can dress for those things.
You can, and that's the fun thing today, especially for guys. There's so much more freedom in how you can present yourself, but it should always be professional.
Well, Hall, in closing, what do you do, Hall, for fun? Like, what do you do to really unravel and have a good time?
Well, I think, again, back to relationships, be with people that I love. Spend time with them, and that's a great thing. Love is what love does, and you got to have love and to be loved. You need to work it. You need to, just like you always say, pretty is as pretty does.
Yep.
It's the same thing with love. So love is very important. And in terms of I love horses. I love riding. I love working the farm. And that really, as part of that balance, it allows me to relax emotion. I do not need physical rest.
No,
I'm not a parlor person.
I knew that, because when I went to visit you at the farm, which you have this big hammock, and I was there and the sun was coming and it was the perfect temperature, and you're on the tractor, you're doing the horses, you're feeding, and I just went back and forth on the hammock, and I was super happy, and you seemed like you were super
happy too.
Just doing tons of work.
I'm just not a sitter.
Yeah.
I need to do. And then if I do, that's mental rest, which is what I need. I don't, for some reason, I have a high energy level.
You do. Well, Hall, thank you so much for sharing with us some insight. I think we got to learn a little bit more about Hall Willkie today.
I hope so. Thank you, sweetheart.
Thank you, babe.